It's high noon.
Welcome to episode 24 of Foul Play. That is Fantasy Overwatch League play. We've got a jam-packed episode this week, so we're going to be getting right into things here. Week one is in the rearview mirror, so we are on and moving on from our opening week matchups here. I want to start by checking in with my esteemed co-host, Blevins. It's been a little while, brother. You were big timing us last week. You were too busy hobnobbing on the community countdown. We were a little personally insulted about it, to be perfectly honest with you. I like to think Foul Play is a bit more of a big deal than the Overwatch League preseason or whatever it was called.
Pretty big deal.
True.
But how you been doing, my man? How did your week one matchups go?
Man, that is a great question. That Striker would have been able to answer me if he would have played. So if that's any indication, we can extrapolate.
Little rough. Now, we are kind of working with slightly incomplete information. As you guys know, the highnoon.gg platform is ever growing, and that includes things like matchup results pages that are going to be dropping this week and stuff like that. So bear with the platform. We think we have a decent handle on how we did. I think I went 2-1 this week. Asmith, how'd you do this week? Were there any, losses in an expert league or anything you want to talk about real fast before we move on?
There were a lot of big wins, like hugely large amount of wins, and then there was one minute little one that we don't actually have the final stats on, so we don't know if we even lost. So
we don't know.
Don't try to hang it over my head. We don't know.
We're pretty sure, since your tank didn't really play that much. But we will have to wait and see exactly, as you are right. We're not 100% positive that I got that win. But it looks good for me, I'll say that much. Had like 100 and something point lead going into the last day.
Yeah, Smurf.
But we've got, you guys will remember from last year, we got a lot of segments in this show. We've got leaders and feeders. We're going to talk waiver wire pickups, players you can cut, get them the heck off of your team. Who do you start in week 2? We've still got a couple suspended players. We've got sleepers of the week, and we brought the mailbag back this week to answer some of your guys' questions brought to us by Twitter and Discord. So thank you guys for submitting those. As always, if you have questions, you can join our Discord, discord.me/High Noon Podcast. There's a fantasy mailbag text channel where Asmith, myself, or the Blevins will answer all of your questions individually. Unless you submit them to the show, then we'll wait and answer them on the show so you guys can get the fun of hearing your questions read on the air. But let's move right into our leaders. Asmith, I want you to take the support category for us. Who were the All-Stars this week?
Look, All-Stars this week, Raucus kicked it off strong. I mean, outside of Shaz, who literally dominated, but we kind of expected that one. Raucus came in at second on the combined score with 394.77 points. He came in 8th in the single score, or the best ball situation, 197.43. He a very strong player there. We kind of expected to do well, maybe not this well. Sleepy came in strong, 3rd in the combined score, 393.63, and 3rd in the best format with 227.19. Pretty strong there. Sleepy, we'll see how much longer we keep him. Neptuno came in strong for Lucio players, 264.29, came in 12th for supports and 14th in the single best format with 155.04 points. Definitely one of the strongest Lucios, kind of what we expected, but I mean, to be honest, he kind of kicked some butts of some main supports or some flex supports. So interesting thoughts there. Lucios aren't complete throwaways.
No, especially with some of these teams splitting playtime on their flex support too, really muddles things up a little bit. Blevins, talk to us about the DPS leaders from this week.
Yeah, DPS started off with Dante, number 1 overall in the combined scoring, 3rd on the best score format. He had 386 in the combined 200.99 in the best scoring format. We've also got Surefour, who is second in the combined 324.48 and number one overall for DPS, or number one for DPS at 215.04 in the best format.
Just real quick, I want to highlight that's a really big gap between first and second for the overall. Like 386 to 324, that's 62 points for those of us that are math challenged, myself included. Used all the fingers and toes to figure it out while Blevins was talking, but that's a big gap. So Dante really performed well on the Zarya roll. Okay, go on.
Yeah, we've got Godsby with 314.94 on the combined. That's good for sixth in the DPS category, and was fifth in the DPS category with a $194.34 for the best. And then also rounding it out here, we got Sinatra, who is fifth for DPS in combined 317.44 and 11th with 179.44 for the combined, or for the best format.
Yeah, Sinatra showed very consistent over those two games. That's what that means when you have a very high combined score, but maybe placing, but a significant difference in the best. So great to see. Consistency is something we strive for, even if it's not necessarily the best thing in an individual week.
He didn't even play in all the matches, did he?
He missed like single maps. Like I think he missed their cough maps. He did that. Anyways, he missed a little bit of time, but. Moving on, we've got some tanks to talk about here. The number one overall tank for the combined scoring was Void from the Gladiators with 293.87. He was second overall in the best game format with 186.55. Muma was an absolute beast with his 10 maps he got to play this week, coming in at second place in the overall combined, 281.62, but 16th with 143.22. Had just about the exact same score, like it was plus or minus 5 in both of his games. So a very rock steady output here statistically from Muma in a rough week. And Axiom as well did pretty good with the damage numbers and statistics here. He was the third overall tank in combined, 280.67. He was 11th with 148.0, though he just lost his job. All right, let's move through the feeders. I'm going to take the support here because I talked the most, and this is the shortest. Custa lost his job to Kuki, and a lot of people started him. A lot of people drafted him. He was one of the higher drafted main support players. Yikes. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch. And listen, it's a feeder, and it's in support. I'm going with Jonak. You paid your number one overall draft pick.
Yeah.
Jonak in one of his games got just 78 points for one of his matchups. So best game format did pretty well, 206. He was the seventh best support player, but in the overall he was 284, left a lot on the table. One of his matches was right up there with Shaz. The other one was right down there with some not great performing flex supports. If you're curious, the impact of the best ball format or the best game format versus the raw scoring format, this is one of them. Really would have kind of let Jonak off the hook for a subpar performance there, but nonetheless, if you're in the best game format, he did just fine. Blevins,
he did just fine, which is not good for your number one overall pick necessarily.
You're not wrong there, but really anytime you're top 10, you just kind of got to call it a win. As long as he's never not top 10, you're probably getting your money's worth. But honestly, I just wanted to highlight 78 points from Jonak in one of their matches is not something I really expected and don't expect to see much in the future. But Blevins, talk to me about the DPS feeders this week.
Yes, we have got Ado here, 44th for the DPS, 47 points in both categories here. We had Effect of the Dallas Fuel, 31st for the DPS, 135 in combined, 71.02 for best game here, which, I mean, man, after what we saw last year with Effect not being in and then him coming back and making a big point to be like, hey, I'm back. Oh, man, this is going to be great. This is going to be a top scorer. Not quite. Did not quite get there where you wanted Effect to be as well. In a similar fashion here, we've got Soon, who's 35th overall in the combined scoring, 31st for best game with 116 in both categories, of course. Soon only played one match there, but again, another starting DPS player for an expansion team where you're thinking he's going to get a lot of playing time. Really didn't live up to expectation,
especially in a win.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in a big win as well. Hacksaw here, 36th overall for DPS, 110.75. Again, only played a single game here, and Prophet, another pretty much unanimously first, if not likely a first round or early round pick, 17th overall for combined with 246.54 and 25th in the DPS category for single game. And I got to add one here. Striker.
Yeah.
Striker had 24 points.
I took him off because he just didn't play in the meta, and that's one of the things we're going to be.
I dropped him a little lower. He's down further in the notes.
He didn't play, but that's why he was a feeder, because I played it. Like, why would you not play Striker as the San Francisco Shock? I can see why you wouldn't play him as a fantasy owner, and I obviously wish that I didn't play him. But man,
talk around the league as Sinatra is the best Zarya in Overwatch League. End of story. I've heard that from multiple different, league sources or insiders or what have you. Not that that's their opinion or my opinion, right, but that is kind of the consensus opinion among players within the league. So that is, to me, why we'll get more onto what to do with these players that were benched just a little bit down the line here. Asmith, talk to me about Tanks.
Look, Tanks, the guy who lost me the game here against DeathBlow, that was Smurf.
Love Smurf.
42nd. Yeah, man, he's about to go into Smurf Village, if you know what I'm saying. Anyways, 42nd tank overall. That's 66.77 points. 42nd as well. That's odd. In best format, 50.61. That's weird. All right. And then Gushue, the guy who Deathblow was so high on. 40th tank, 74.91 in combined, 43rd in best at 50.19.
Might have been high on him, but I didn't start him this week, Smurf boy.
That's what are you gonna do? Sometimes the picks just don't fall, man. All right, OGE kicked it off. A tank that a lot of people picked really high, 24th in combined, with 156.09, and yes, he did play two games. And 33rd best tank in best, it's 90.36. And kicking it off at the very end was Gesture. Yeah, Gesture, one of your top two tanks that most people, top three, I guess, people picked. 23rd in combined, and he played two games, and he put up 161.05. 34th in best with 88.94. That's a big oof.
Yeah, this tank category was split into two different categories to me. One of them was guys that were unfortunately splitting time in Gushue and Smurf, and maybe not really their fault, they underperformed. And then there was guys that, to me, failed the eyeball test, right? Like OGE and Gesture didn't look great this week. Their teams had mixed results. OGE, I think, is going to be fine. Gesture, I think, is going to be fine. But maybe a meta stage 1 conversation with those guys. We've got to adjust their expectations going forward. And the other two, I think, playtime will work itself out in the long term. But
yeah.
Gesture,
and if you go ahead.
Gesture just was not the same Gesture on Reinhardt as he is as a Winston. It's just not that like world killer that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. And if you listen to me, No Smite got more points than Gushue did. So if you listen when Deathblow was hyping Gushue, I'm just saying, I called it. No Smite was going to play, and he got more points.
Good job on No Smite. Unfortunately, our listeners lost no matter which of the two they played, so neither of us can really take
you're not wrong, but...
yeah, the playtime split was brutal.
Don't draft Gushue high.
If we get into a meta, though, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I need to see more time on them to know if it's a Reinhardt versus Winston split. Then I know what to do with them in the future, but if they're splitting time across the roles and what it is doesn't matter. We need a larger sample size on Smurf and and Gouchouet both, I think, here to know exactly what to do with them. But we're going to move things along here, start to talk about some waiver wire pickups. You guys can go in, make some changes to your roster mid-season. So we've got a few we want to highlight, and then we've got a separate category of people we want to talk about a little bit here. You haven't finished typing that name, but that is a good addition to the list. Make sure you finish that one up.
That was looking up. Go ahead.
I'm going to start things off. I'm going to read down the list here, and then I'm going to have you guys kind of call out some that you like and maybe you're targeting this week. Number 1 here is Kaio. Number 2.
Hold on a second. Didn't we used to call this Budos in or XQ see you later? Wasn't this what this was called?
Maybe, but
I know those were definitely categories. I don't know if this is,
I wasn't wild about those names, and the XQC later is not in the league anymore. So we need a new name, and we got a whole bunch of new player names that we can maybe use to tie that in. So that's a good question for our fan base. Let us know in Discord or tweet at us at HNP_FOWL if you guys want to suggest a name for waiver wire pickups and drops, something that maybe plays off the player names a little bit. Blevins just gave you an example of the bad one we came up with last year. So bad it was good, though, I will say. But yeah, let's go down the list of waiver wire pickups, and then we'll highlight the ones we individually like. Kaio, Dogman, Nene, Hydration, Sinatra, Envy, Stellar, and Michelle. Asmith, there's one I really want you to pick up on because I know you're the one that put it into the notes. So let's start with you. Who are you targeting this week on waivers? Well, my Discord seems to have completely crashed. Both Blevins and Asmith have locked up and aren't doing anything. So I'm just going to try to make up for it as best I can while I also try to recover. So bear with me while we have significant problems here. Oh, I got my guys back. I got a thumbs up from somebody. I moved us to a new server on Discord. That seems to have done it. RIP US East.
It wasn't me. Okay.
I was like, what just happened?
Not at all, but Asmith, take it away and let us know who you're targeting this week on waivers.
All right. There are two main ones that I'm targeting. Michelle, who I'm very high on, took over for Zumba and basically just took over. So Zumba didn't play at all. Michelle is the off tank for the Soul Dynasty. Seems to be getting 100% playtime right now. I think he's a good target. He's probably a mid-table tank 2 probably player. I wouldn't say he's a tank 1, but up there. And then Kaio was my other one.
Kaio's the one I really wanted to hear you talk about.
Yeah,
so we'll go more on that. But Michelle, I just want to ask, had a really rough outing in their second match against the Dallas Fuel. Does that worry you, or do you think that gets better over time?
I think it's probably going to get a little better. He's got to mesh with this team a little more, and I think ultimately, it seemed like Soul Dynasty in general was not prepared for the Fuel the way they should have been, and I think it was a team format, and it's not necessarily just Michelle himself. So that was kind of my thought on there. And if you want me to hit the other one, I can go ahead and hit Kaio here, man. Kaio. Chengdu Hunters, I was very, 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 very low on, if you recall. And look, he's getting 100% playtime. He's a flex support. And hey, guess what? They won. The first game they played, they won. Yeah. Kaio did pretty well, and flex supports are at a premium in this league. And if he's starting 100% of the time, I kind of think you probably want him on your team because he's going to end up doing pretty well for you. Even if they start getting beat, I still think, unless he gets benched, he's going to be worth the support 3, support 2 spot you're going to have for him.
Yeah, the competence Chengdu showed makes you feel like more map 5s are coming than, just the one we saw this week. And also we just don't know. All these expansion teams, we're guessing, and 1 week sample size is not enough on any one of them to make any decisions. Notably as well, if you're in raw scoring format, even the flex supports on the bad teams will have value. So if you're in raw scoring, Kaio definitely needs to be owned. Blevins, why don't you pick out 2 of these waiver wire pickups to highlight?
Yeah, I'm going to pick Nene here, mostly because...
Weird, right?
It's crazy.
But yeah, Nene, the Zarya player now for the NYXL in a world where we're going to be seeing Zarya for the foreseeable future. This is what we were waiting for, right? We wanted to see this week 1. We wanted to see a couple of matches with NYXL. Hey, who are they going to be playing? Who's going to be seeing play? Who's not going to be seeing play? SBB, nada. Pine, nada. Flower, nada. Libero, yes. Nene, definitely yes. So give me some Nene. I think if you took any of our advice, it was, hey, don't invest in NYXL DPS players, with the exception of maybe Libero, who also saw a lot of play. But it looks like Nene is going to be the future of them. He actually had, I believe, he had 277 points in combined and almost 200 in best format. So really good play out of an offense player. The other one I'm going to pick here is actually kind of a combine. It's going to be Envy, as well as, actually I'm going to throw in Aid here, as much as the meme is here. Okay, Aid specifically for this week, and here's why. Aid actually was the highest scoring player on the Toronto Defiant, with 200 and some points. I have it here. I swear I have it. Where are you?
206.76.
206 points from one game, which is quite big. Had more points than Jonak, which again was much memery going on. But here's the thing. Aid is going to be in the same position this week, because we're not going to see Neko until next week.
Mm-hmm.
Toronto's got 2 games this week. They're both, if not actually winnable, game 5 potential here. And man, if Aid can have if you have any amount of faith in Toronto, which I obviously have a lot here, man, Aid is a good one. And in the same vein, Envy as well. I think Envy is a much more long-term pick. If you had to pick between the two, I'm saying, hey, get Envy. But if you want a nice little point boost for this week specifically, pick up Aid. And then maybe if you got some people who don't listen to the podcast in your league, trade off this vastly overvalued Aid, because he's going to go down in value starting the week after this one, because he's going to be going back to main support when we get Neko in.
Yeah,
sure. And just a quick reminder to you two, we got to start doing we forgot to do the sleepers before the show, so we got to scroll down and start to fill those in before we get to that segment. But for my 2 sleepers here, I'm going to start with Sinatra. And with Sinatra, I want to give the caveat that I also think you really need to check and make sure Dante isn't available in your league. He's probably not owned in, he's probably not available in at least 50% of leagues, which is the measuring stick I use. I want most of you guys to be able to go find these guys when we use them, so we're not listing Dante. But Sinatra is one I don't think was drafted, and I think he's locked into that Zarya role for this team for the time being. I think he's going to dominate play time on that position. So I would look to pick up and use Sinatra basically as soon as I possibly could. Let's see. I'm also going to go with Stellar. I think the Toronto Defiant, this is more of a long-term stash, but I think the Defiant showed they're a quality team, a team that was better than I initially anticipated them being, considering they're missing that piece. So I think Stellar is going to get the opportunity to maybe perform more down the line. This isn't somebody I'd pick up if I needed to start using them right away, but if I've got a spare bench spot, I've got a couple of weeks where I don't think I need to pick, make any drastic moves or anything like that. Always be looking ahead in your roster 2-3 weeks ahead. When are my 2 games, when are my guys playing 1 game versus 2 games, if you're in the combined raw scoring format, and then maybe make that move for that guy that you want to use that week a couple weeks ahead of time, something like that. So if you don't have a situation like that, I think Stellar's a good bench stash for down the line. The last thing I wanted to talk about, there was a main supports, as Asmith alluded to earlier. There was a few of them that performed up there, did really, really well in points. We didn't get to see Lucio played very much, so we weren't exactly sure where it would flesh out, and I think they point-wise showed to be a little stronger than we were initially anticipating. So there's a couple of them that I think performed really well, some of them by the eyeball test. I kind of made this list myself, so I'll let the guys add any other names to it they might want to, but at least point-wise, statistically, this past week, Neptuno, Animo, Boink, and Massa from Atlanta there All did very, very well. They showed to be kind of fraggers on the hero a little bit. They had really good stats and scored comparably to players like Jonak and things like that who had the one rough outing statistically. Any Lucios you guys want to add to that list? I think Big Goose is probably already drafted. That's why he's not there. But any others? Nope.
Yeah, no, I think it's good.
Yeah.
I think you're right there. Massa is a big one. Neptuno probably got drafted. Boink, I think, is a good pickup too, but it's just gonna be, we're gonna have to wait and see on. I think it's gonna be more strictly based on map count on main supports. I think a lot of that's gonna have to happen.
Yeah. I will say too, I really hope the Boink thing works out, because I got on record with that one before draft even happened. I was like, our first episode, I'm like, flyer on Boink late, I'm telling you. So that's enough for me to take some credit there. Asmith, why don't you talk to us about the definitely cuttable players here, and then we'll read into some of these other maybe more questionable ones.
All right. I got a couple here. Zunba and Custa. Guess what? They got 0 playtime. 0. None. Most likely they're probably not going to play next week if they didn't play this week. Highly cuttable players. Get rid of them. Move on with your life. There's a lot of new people to pick up.
Yeah, they're in roles that are very stable across metas too. Like, there's only 2 different heroes that a main support might play. And if Mercy comes back, we're definitely not going to want anything to do with main support. So I agree, Custa's definitely a go. And I think Sol made the decision to go firmly with Michelle instead of Zunba. So I think you can safely cut either of those 2 guys. Blevins, why don't you read this list of other maybe more questionable cuts? We think these are players that you guys are going to want to be cutting and going to be asking this question a lot, so we're going to try to preemptively answer it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start this because I just want to hear what you think about it, because he's on my teams. Striker, what do you do with Striker?
The answer is the same for all 4 of them, so read the whole list.
Striker, Kodak, Gushue, and get shadow burned.
Yeah.
Got him.
Hey, Smith, I know we generally agree on this one, so you want to answer it, and then I'll kind of come in afterwards?
Okay. I'll say in best ball format, you keep them and hang on, bench them. I think they both have high potential to end up. I think Kodak would be the one that I would most be likely that probably not going to work out, because Dogman every time Dogman was in, he looked better. And other than that, I mean, in raw format, it's going to be hard to maintain them on your bench, to maintain keeping and winning games with them with a 0 on your bench. It's going to be really, really hard. So if you can do it, I'd keep them, because I think in the next meta they're probably going to pop off. But they're several of them are going to be meta dependent. Gushue, if he incorporates better, maybe, but I don't know. That's kind of where I'm leaning. Keep them if you can, but if you can't in the raw stats format, find somebody better.
Yeah, a well-constructed roster is going to have room on its bench, less so in the raw scoring format, where you might need to let some of these guys go. I'm not big on Kodak. I've been very adamant about that fact. I do agree with A. Smith. I thought Dogman looked better, and I thought he played in the more pivotal moments. So I think he's kind of getting the nod, or they're leaning that direction towards playing him. So I'd be more willing to let Kodak go than the other 3. But like you said, these guys are players for a different meta. If we ever get to always Winston, Gushue is going to be a beast. If we ever get to not triple tank, triple support, Striker's going to be a beast. Shadowburn's going to be, at least starting and playing again, you would have to assume. So yeah, generally you want to hold on to these guys unless you absolutely need room to play somebody this week. Because these are players that you're going to be coming back to this well, right? We're going to be talking about them as waiver wire pickups when we go into stage 2, or, maybe after we're wrong about the meta in stage 3 and we got, it's drastically different than we anticipated, something along those lines. So try to keep them if you can. But you got to win your games in front of you, right? You don't get to the playoffs by, throwing a full stage. You hear me, Houston? If you want to make the playoffs, you got to get it together this stage. Yeah, so it's a tough question to ask, and every roster has to be treated differently, but ideally you would like to try to hold on to these guys. So all right.
Yeah, I think for especially in combined format, these are the types of players that's like you just have to be willing to aggressively cut them to pick up 2-game players. Like, like can you afford to have a 24 point, dead, just dead bird on your team in striker? No. You need to be able to, like, hey, pick up the, middle to like higher mid-tier player for like that normally wouldn't be a start maybe in best ball or in best game format, but like they're playing 2 games, so they're going to have 1.5 to 2x the number of points. And with a risk like striker, especially now, like you can get him later or not, like that's fine. Like he might, if goats or 3-3 stays, like striker's not looking any better, right? You need to be able to sacrifice the like potential of being a good player later for like, hey, I just need my my Chengdu Hunter flex support here, or whatever. Like I need my Chengdu Hunter player that's going to play 2 games instead of striker who's just going to be sitting on my bench doing nothing.
It's going to be an interesting. Go ahead.
Or trade them off their name. There are going to be some people in your league who just aren't paying attention. They see striker and they're like, heck yeah, see if you can trade off their name.
Sure.
Yeah, you can trade them to me at a discount. I will happily buy that one. I have a feeling striker might be to Blevins what Gamzu was to Asmith last season, where he cuts him, DeathBlow picks him up and runs away with the league. But we'll have to wait and see.
I have a feeling that.
And by runs away with the league, I mean got into the playoffs and happened to win. I didn't actually dominate or anything like that. But nonetheless, let's move on. Let's talk about who should we start this week. Again, guys, we're going to be going through team by team, talking about their matchups, what we think of them, and who we like individually from those teams. In this particular matchup or in this particular week. We're not going to be going matchup by matchup, game by game through. We do that on the flagship show. Make sure you guys check that out if that's what you want to hear. They kind of do supplement each other pretty well. So, Blevin, start us off. Talk to us about the first team here.
We've got the Philadelphia Fusion, who are going to be playing the Florida Mayhem and the Dallas Fuel. So what I would consider a easy clap win and a pretty big question mark, honestly, considering the parody puzzle that we talked about on the flagship show. High scoring week for Philly players. I mean, you had EQO, broke the 300 club with the combined format. You had Carpe also did. Boombox also did. I mean, any of their starters, really. I mean, you have no one that actually played on the Fusion that in combined format had under 240 points. Like, I'm fine playing Sato, Poco, Neptuno, Boombox, Carpe, or EQO. Play them all. Like, that's fine. No one had under 140 points in best ball format or best game format. So play one, play more, play them all. Give me the whole Fusions team. You're gonna be doing pretty decent if you just started the entire team.
Asmith, the conversation doesn't get much more different about this next team. Talk to us about the next one on our list here.
Florida Mayhem. There's nothing but mayhem on this team. However, I do think they're gonna pair up decently well against Chengdu. Now I will say that Philly, they're probably gonna get easy clapped. But I mean, obviously, Saya's not playing, so that's a big question mark. Hagopin is a startable option. They're playing too, and he is a flex support. He's going to get healing. He's going to get damage. He may not get a lot, but I think Hagopin is a starter in raw format. But I would be very, very hesitant on best format. If you think they can take down Chengdu, or you think it goes to game 5, which is a possibility there,
Mm-hmm.
If that happens, then they're going to spark in best format. Now, even combined, I still think when they get rolled by Philly, it's not going to end up well for them. So that's kind of where I'm at right now with Philly or with Florida.
I think I know the answer to this one already, but I'm just going to kind of ask it anyways. Hagopin is the third flex support in the captain spot. or are you playing somebody like Dante who had a huge week last week but has pretty tough matchups this week facing him?
Who are they playing? New York and Hangzhou. I am probably gonna throw Hagopin.
Yeah, I think that's a really close question. I'm leaning Dante a little bit there just because I think regardless of whether or not Houston is able to win either of these games, their players played well last week, right? Like the team failed on a team level, but the players played well. I think that'll keep Houston at least competitive, even in losses. So I don't think we're going to be looking at many like whitewashes against Houston, though New York with the map pool, especially that they're facing, is certainly a possibility. Maybe a better thing to consider in a best game
We'll see.
format.
I mean, if you look at last week, you thought that Houston had an easy clap win over two teams that had irreplaceable starters, and then they got dominated, or not dominated, but they took these two teams that had irreplaceable starters, and they both took them to 5 maps and lost. So
yeah, they punted in some crucial spots, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, when they play teams that are at full strength, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think in that specific question, I think Florida players have a much higher chance to just get completely rolled, easy clapped, getting almost no points. Whereas like Dante last week popped off 386 in combined 200 in best game. I think that at the very least, I think you're going to have one, if not two, close games in potentially like winnable situations.
I can't see Florida getting clapped by Chengdu. It's hard for me to see that. Even though Chengdu won, they played a Guangzhou team who we didn't know anything about.
And Florida did literally nothing positive under any circumstances. But
I don't even remember.
We don't got to focus too much on last week. It's a tough dilemma, and that's. Just wanted to have the conversation so people could kind of hear both sides of it more than we needed to come up with a definitive answer. So moving on, we've got the Guangzhou Charge. They're playing against the Dallas FOWL and the Vancouver Titans. I'm kind of just staying away a little bit. I'm very nervous about this team. Obviously, there's going to be some pieces that you're going to kind of want to use. But I'm really, for the most part, I think Shu is startable. They've got the 2 matches. I think that's somebody you can safely go with. If I'm really looking, I might look towards Eileen. I think Happy was pretty disappointing. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think he was
middling, 138.
The lesser of the 2. Yeah, 138 in combined, which means
they only played
once. Right. So
138 is not bad in best.
Yeah, not too bad. So I don't know. You could probably use either of them. He actually did outperform Eileen too. I'm seeing it. Eileen was 133, but they were both solid. So I think you can use them if you're considering DPS to go maybe 3 deep, or you waited to draft some DPS players. I think those guys are definitely viable options. I don't think the matchups are unattainable. I think there's a possibility we see a map 5 here with them. So those 3 might be okay. One player I didn't really look up at all was. Hotba, how did he do from the flex support or flex?
Hotba, yeah, he had a $134.
Same thing. Yeah, they were all
they all had roughly
about $130.
130, with Shu kind of at the top of the pack with 175, which is like you talked about before. Like it's a consistency thing. Like they. All were about that same. Like it was like when we talked about Gladiators last year. Like those DPS players, like you could play them because you knew they were going to get this many points. They were never going to pop off. They were really not ever going to be, up in the Carpe striker territory, but they were always going to be like, top 10, top 15, and like you can plan your team around playing players like that.
Yeah, I'm kind of stopping myself from wanting to play either of those DPSs. I really look at it. Just play Shu. I'm out. I'm out on Guangzhou for another week.
I want to play them, but
it's feasible. It's feasible if you need it. Let's just leave it at that.
Sure.
I mean, Asmith, there's nobody better. Maybe you're as hyped as you'll be all season. So talk to us about your boys here, the boys in blue.
All right. Hey, we took a win A big dub
Big win.
over Seoul. Big dub over Seoul. Granted, let's not talk about San Francisco. I'm just gonna wash that up to they weren't thinking right. Hey,
They just
hey,
met
I don't know.
RCK
AKM
5
was
minutes
still
ago.
charging his blood.
They did. Got him. All right. All right. They're playing
Never will,
Guangzhou and Philly. I think Guangzhou is a very winnable game, especially after their performance against Chengdu. Not super hyped on Guangzhou right now. I think Dallas should be able to take a dub there, and then Philadelphia. It's gonna be interesting. I don't think they're gonna win, but hey. But with those, look, Zachary played the whole time. Unko played, and Unko was very strong. I think Zachary and Unko are probably starting options there. OGE, I after his stinking performance here, I'm not. I don't think I'd start him, and that's it kind of hurts me a little bit to say, but hey, man. And then Effect is getting hot swapped with AKM, so you don't. They're splitting playtime. There's not a. I think Zachary's the only startable DPS, and he's probably a DPS too on a good day. So, other than that, right now, yeah, no, I wouldn't touch. RCK is the only other one who is a possibility, but even then, I don't think he's performing well enough. Granted, takes in general are not performing super well. So,
For my money, I'm going to play OGE anyways. I get everything A. Smith's saying. I'm not happy about it, but I'm just not willing to make a change to my roster and feel forced to do that just because of one down week. I mean, he was like their poster boy for, he was what was the one thing about that team that people were like, but OGE looks really good. And I'm like, he sure did. But the rest of it was kind of a little bit up in the air. Unko a little bit there as well. But yeah, a rough go. Blevins, talk to us about the surprise 1-0 Chengdu Hunters.
Yeah. Well, pat themselves on the back for getting that victory. And you'd think, hey, this is a team that won, and they won in 5. So, man, let's see how great these stats are. Wrongo bongo. They topped out with Kaio at 143.41, which, if we look back to Florida Mayhem, is actually less than what they topped out at when they played the same number of games and got 4-0'd. So even in a victory and even in a game 5, their top player is getting 143. Their next best is Jinmu at 136, followed by Elsa at 133. What's going on? Bacon Jack, one of their DPS players, 37 points. Late Young, 85 points. Ameng, 106. Like they've got some split playing time, but like Kaio is like maybe the like only playable option. I think maybe Jinmu, but like I don't want, if possible, I don't want to touch any of them. Honestly.
They got rolled in their map losses, and that really hurt. I think they got like a total of like 6 elims in their map losses in both of them, so it really, really hurts. They basically only
really
played
bad
3 maps.
I'm starting Kaio, I think, with confidence in a best game format, but only because they play against Florida. Otherwise, I'd basically be in a completely stay away scenario. Man, it really worked out this time. I'm going to be talking about the Houston Outlaws here. We didn't even have to change it around like we did last week, A. Smith. It just happened this time, and I didn't plan it. But Houston's got some rough matchups this week. They're going to be underdogs against the Hangzhou Spark and the New York Excelsior. Listen, they're playing twice, and I think they're going to be competitive within the maps against these opponents. It was a disappointing week last week. They went to 5. We're probably not going to see 5 maps in both of these again. I would be very surprised. I mean, they've gone to 5 against New York in the past. New York's not super comfortable in this meta, but Houston's got their bad maps there. Maybe Hangzhou does. It's going to be interesting to see. I picked Houston 3-1 there just to try to make up some ground and pick them. But it's going to be, I think, still a productive fantasy week here for Houston, though. I'm fine playing Dante. I'm fine playing Raucus. I'm fine playing Boink if I'm really desperate at supports and I whiffed on like a Kodak or, you know what I mean, or one of the other guys that maybe didn't guarantee his play time. So use your Houston players where you would. Muma's a set him and forget him if he's playing twice. Doesn't matter what format. You don't have to worry about it. He'll do fine in at least one of his games, no matter who the opponents are. Stay away from, obviously, Jake. He was probably drafted and he's not getting enough play time right now with the meta and the comps that we're running here in stage 1. But listen, if they performed for you in week 1, I think you can rely on them in week 2. Don't expect maybe as high of a point total this time around. But again, these are startable players, and I think the Houston Outlaws, the way they were drafted and the way people were so down on them, regardless of what the win-loss record is, this isn't a team to me that's going to be blown out a lot. So I think your Houston Outlaws players are very, very good in fantasy and probably going to really help your team based off where you had to draft them in order to get them. Asmith, on to the next, the opponent for the Houston Outlaws here.
Look, I like the Hangzhou Spark here. They're playing Houston and London. Both teams went 0-2. Hangzhou went 2-0. I like Hangzhou players here. Ria tore it up.
Yes, he did. The new Poco.
Ria was amazing. Bazi, very, very high on him. He's their Brigida player, and he did very, very, very well. There are definitely some players there that BB, even though he split time with Revenge, BB tore it up. Gushui and No Smite, I don't think you play either of them. No Smite is the only one that I would even slightly consider, but even then I'm not stuck on either of them. I think BB is playable even if he doesn't play all 4 maps in both games, because I think he only sits out in 1 map and plays the other 3 if I'm not mistaken. So Godsby is also very strong. So their DPS looks set in Godsby and Bazi. I think Crystal is he still underage, or what happened? Is he just not playing?
Don't know, to be perfectly honest with you.
So I think you fire up their DPS. I think you fire up their off tank. You fire up their starting main flex support, and then their main support and main tank you stay away from.
Hard to argue with that. Blevins, who's next on our list?
Toronto Defiant.
You get all your teams. What's up?
I get all my teams.
We're splitting that one though every other week. I got them next week.
Fine. Yeah, you get them every other weekend. It's okay. And you had a good lawyer. Splitting the kids. That's what I mean. Yeah. I mean, I like a lot of these Toronto players. Like I said, Aid. I think again, Aid with the caveat of he is a this week only. You actively want him this week, and then maybe ship him right after the week, or potentially like
trade him to Thorn.
Trade him to Thorn. I mean, here's the thing: I already own him in 2 of my leagues, so you're not getting him in my league. But and Thorn owns him in another league. So, yeah, no.
So what you're saying is you have all the aids.
Yeah, I have every single aid. That is for sure. No, I'm not gonna make that joke.
It's too late, brother. We're there.
I was gonna but yeah, no. I mean, every one of their players, even Roki, who is not someone again like. If you owned Roki for some reason, like he's playable again this week only. Roki less so than Aid. Like Aid is still going to play. He's just not going to be putting up these 200-point single games like he did this week. Roki is probably on the bench after this week once we get Neko back. So if you have Roki for whatever reason, or you have a couple of goose eggs on your team and there's no one better, like Roki is a decent option here. 2 winnable, if not at least close games for the Defiant can lead to a good number of points. Unlike the Chengdu Hunters, when Toronto won their game and went to 5 maps, all of their players got a good number of points. Envy $175, Aid 200 plus, Ivy almost 200 at 192, Stellar at 178. I'm honestly, with the exception of Roki, I'm starting and I mean Yakpung had a $143, which is very respectable. And like we talked about on the flagship show, I think he had a little bit questionable play. I think he was seemed almost like nerves or whatever. So honestly, with the exception of Roki, I'm fine playing anyone. And Aid is one of my sleeper picks for this week. Then trade him off. I like all the Toronto players this week.
Well, I guess that means I get the New York Excelsior. So, no, I'm just kidding, Blevins. Go ahead and you can take 2 in a row.
Oh yeah, let's do it. I'm doing it. Yeah. So NYXL again. Much like we talked about before, you want Libero. Nene is a big pickup who's likely on the waiver wire unless someone was crazy. Obviously Jonak. What I would suggest doing, which is possible, if you can wheel and deal and sweet talk whoever owns Jonak in the league and really upplay the fact that their number 1 pick overall was giving you like barely top 8 stats, like maybe you can get a sweet talk trade for Jonak.
78 points in 1 game. He's washed up.
On his 1 week in 2 seasons where he's not number 1. Yeah. I mean, it's worth a shot, right? Like, go for it. But yeah, obviously you're playing Jonak if you have him, or trade him to me. I mean, Mecco was fine. $152. Mono was fine at 124. But yeah, I mean, I'm still like not super. I'm not super like thrilled about a lot of these players. Animo 156, like. I don't know. They just don't seem. I mean, they're fine. They're all fine. All the starters are fine, but I don't know if we're going to be seeing the like. I mean, I would imagine Jonak probably going to be back up to form. I mean, regardless, like 200 points in single game is still going to be very, very good regardless. But yeah, obviously you're playing Jonak. Pick up Nene. I think he's a huge pickup this week.
Plug and play.
Everyone else, yeah, plug and play at this point. Everyone else, I think, is playable though. With Mono especially, like he's your tank too, but there are better options, I think.
Yeah. And the last of the teams that play twice this week is the Vancouver Titans. They play against the Guangzhou Charge and the San Francisco Shock. I want to make a note here that these games are Saturday and Sunday, so they're back-to-back days. There's not a lot of prep time going into the San Francisco matchup. Luckily for Vancouver, they probably don't need too much prep for the Guangzhou Charge, who fell to the Chengdu Hunters last week, but yeah, this is a situation where we've got a team where the playtime seems pretty well figured out. We kind of know how they're going to manage their roster, which means if these guys did well for you last week, you look for them this week. I think they're all for sure locked and loaded, playable, this week if you're in the best game format. If you're in the 2-league format, I could see having some questions about just, basically most all of them, to be honest. Notably, I think like Hacksaw underperformed last week. There was a couple players on Vancouver that maybe didn't quite score what you wanted them to, but who did they play last week? Do we remember?
They played against Shanghai
and just crushed them into the ground because it was Gamzu's like second scrim or anything with them.
Didn't bode well for their points, honestly. They had 2 players that were over 100.
Oh, and Asmith is fact-checking like an animal down there. He's found one more team that's got two matchups this week, but he's next, so he'll get to talk about him in just a second. But yeah, listen, I think, your Vancouver players, despite maybe a lackluster performance last week, are going to be just fine fantasy-wise, especially in best ball, like I said, in one of these games. Either the DPS pop off against the Charge because they're just the much better team, or it's really close with San Francisco. It goes to 5. I could see any of these scenarios, holding true for Vancouver. I'm going to use them this week since I've maybe felt like I didn't want to use them with their 1 game last week. Asmith, so the real last team with only 1 opponent this week.
Nope.
Did I miss multiple? Oh, jeez.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm fired.
You should be. No, I'm just kidding. The Valiant are playing. Los Angeles Valiants are playing New York and Toronto. 2 very, I think, are going to be difficult matchups. I think Toronto is more of the winnable matchup. But look, they played Hangzhou. They lost. They're 0-1. However, 2 of their players, maybe 3 of their players scored insanely well. That's Agilities, that's Space, and that's Izayaki. Disappeared. Okay. And Izayaki is going to be 100% starter. I don't think they're going to lose as much, even in a loss, even in non-game 5 loss. I think I think they're going to pop off. I think Space, Izzyaki, and I think even Agilities are all in the DPS 1, Tank 1, and Support 1 categories. I know, Agilities. Blevins, we remember the time we were making fun of Agilities, but hey,
True.
his team, he gets the stats.
Let's
especially the
be
way his
fully
team's-
honest. But you weren't just making fun of Agilities. You were making fun of me for suggesting that Agilities had any amount of fantasy value.
Look,
It
any
went a
chance we
little
get to make fun
farther
of
than
you-
making fun of Agilities.
any chance we get to make fun of you, we have to take that opportunity.
That's fair. I just get to tap dance when it blows up in your face. That's all.
Hey, I did take Agility's #1 overall this season. Okay,
true.
I'm pretty high on it.
Second number one overall of the
Number
Minecraft.
1B.
0.5.
Oh, that's too funny. All right, Blevins, you got one other team here with 2 matchups, and I'm
actual-
checking every single other team just to make sure right now.
We've got London Spitfire here. They're playing against Washington Justice
Lol.
and Hangzhou Spark. I mean, it's a similar story as NYXL and honestly a lot of these other teams for London. I mean, if you had decent success with them, run them back. And you had Bird Ring, Prophet, and Bedosin and Fury all pulling, over $120 each, all very startable. Nuss with 107, also a startable option. This is in best format. I mean, you saw Bedosin and Prophet as well as Fury also pulling 200 plus point games. Honestly, Guard really didn't do much. Only had 64 points, and Gesture was like we talked about before, a feeder here. 88 points in your best game format with only 160 in the combined format, which is again would be like a low level tank 2 if you're looking at just those points alone. But man, in terms of how early you probably picked up Jester, oof. I mean, you probably still have to start him, but man, I don't know. Fool me once, okay. Fool me twice, I think he's trade bait at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'd trade him because there'll still be other metas that exist for sure. But they're an interesting team. And a note on Guard, he didn't do much in fantasy. He came in though, and his Sombra was like lights out.
Oh,
the dude was a beast. So he's another one that maybe you put a speculative offer in on. There's another meta I can see where he has. I mean, I don't remember. Birdring doesn't have that kind of impact on a hero like Sombra. And if we need to get into a situation where it's like Tracer and another hero that Birdring doesn't play, you kind of want to keep Prophet on what he's best at. So I could see a world where where Guard does make an impact, but that would be a speculative ad at best. Definitely nobody we're actually using yet.
Long term, for sure.
Next team on our list here is the Washington Justice. They play against the London Spitfire. Due to time, this is the only analysis I'm going to offer. Nope. Asmith, who do you got?
Valid. All right, Atlanta Reign playing Toronto Defiant. I think this is likely to go to Game 5. If you're playing best format, I really like most of the Reign players. Don't know about Dogman and Kodak. I don't think either of them are startable right now. But hey, play your Defran. Plug and play Defran in best format. They're playing one game, so be aware of that. But it could go to Game 5.
Blevins, who do you got?
Yeah, we got Soul Dynasty here, and just for the sake of, we'll do blanket statement. Unless you have a top tier player, you're not gonna want to. It's gonna be a real risk to play them in combined format if they're only playing one game. You're getting a huge drop off. So we won't even mention that for a lot of these players.
It feels like a stomp too. Like it's not a safe play. I think the matchup's almost too good here. I agree with you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
However, for best ball here, Soul, pretty much all the players are good to go. I mean, Fleta, Munchkin, Jay Hong, Jexy, Michelle, and Fissure all had over $115 each. I mean, from a consistency standpoint, that's good enough for me. I mean, not Jexy at the low end with 115 is still nothing to scoff at. So if you own any of them, be more than happy to play them. And if any of these are on the waiver wire, I would definitely look to pick them up. I think Asmith brought up Michelle, which is would be a really good pickup.
Yeah, I'm curious who you guys think on this team, because the way I view them is they're just about all like whatever at their position, like DPS, tank, or whatever twos, right? Like they're kind of the second guys in. Fissure's the one that's on the fence. Ryu Jae-hong, I think, is a flex support number 1 or a support 1 that you can play with supreme confidence. But is there anybody else here that you guys think should be considered higher tier than just like a 2 option?
Fleta.
How did he do last week?
Didn't
Buck
he
50.
Fleta. Yeah, that's
total
pretty solid.
Or best?
Buck 50.
Best. It was about. He was consistent too. He was like 299.
300. He was 300. 50 in each, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Fleta's a DPS 1.
So Fleta and Jae-hong are 1s in their category. Fissures.
If you look at Munchkin, a buck 44 and then 250. I guess that's 100 for another game.
But that's perfect. 44. That's exactly what I wanted from Munchkin. That's exactly why I was high on him. Did he play great? No. Did he ever leave the stage? No. Did he perform decent statistically? No. Or yes, I should say.
Decent, yes. Decent, yes.
Decent, yes,
sure.
Yeah.
Spectacular, no.
No, right. So Munchkin's going to be very safe play for your DPS 2 spot if you got him. I think you're kind of locked and loaded there, especially in best ball this week with the
Michelle too, 140, roughly a 140 and a 120 game. Like either of those are respectable for a best. So I mean, I don't know, man. I'm definitely playing all these players. It's just whether or not they're your 1 or your 2. I think if you are at a position where any of these guys are your number 2, you're in a good spot. You've got a good team if you've got people who are definitively better than these ones.
Yeah. All right, well, moving on, we've got the Shanghai Dragons with their single matchup against the Boston Uprising. Boston's a team still trying to kind of get everything together here. They get Color Hex back. It's the first time we're going to get to see them at their full strength. So this is going to be an interesting matchup for Shanghai. Whether or not they're good beyond 1 or 2 players is going to really depend on how much Gamzu's been able to pick up since the last time we've seen them. But last week, they did have some pretty decent performers here. Notably, let's see, I lost my track. Luffy, obviously, from the support position. He was a buck 39 and 250 for his points in best and raw, respectively. Diem passed the eyeball test more than he passed the stat test here. I thought he looked really good. He was a better best game play than he was a raw scoring play. 116 in best, just 197. So he did have kind of a lower end performance, but one of their games was just an absolute stomp. So it's hard to credit him, credit him too harshly with that. But yeah, let's see. I think Youngjin was filling in tank for a lot of the first matchup or playing a weird role. So not sure what to do there. And I don't know how much Gaguri is going to get to play. I really want to see how they kind of handle everything now that Gamzu's rotated in. I do think Gaguri played in both, though. Like, even when Gamzu was there, she was out there a good amount.
Very little.
Decent amount, anyways. Performed decently well in both of them, but still kind of lower end disappointing numbers. I'm staying away other than that for the time being. I want to let things kind of settle in a little bit, let this team get better over time. Those assets are going to mature with time as the league goes on. Maybe they're not at their best right now. Asmith, who's the next team?
It's Boston, and hey, we just talked about it. They're playing in the Gamsu revenge game. So we shall see if Gamsu does get his revenge, but hey, I like Boston right now. I think they proved that they are better than everyone gave them credit for. That's for sure. I think Fusions is going to turn into a very decent player for them. Not 100% certain if Axiom. I think there's still a lot of question marks right now. Aim God is definitely a startable option in best, but they're playing one game, so it's going to be very difficult to make that work. But I do think in best format, Aim God's a really good pick.
211 in best game format last time. Notably from Boston, Blase had a very good week, 161 in best, 297 in combined, and then Note was solid, not a world beater, but Note is solid. That's his strength. So both of those guys very specifically are good starters as well. I hope this team never figures out that Alamau is better than Kellex because I want them to lose. Moving on, we've got the next team here at Blevins.
Gladiators. Yeah, Gladiators. And much like you talking about the Shanghai or the Washington Justice, I've got the opposite of yes. Give me them all. Any of their starters, lock and load, I think. And notably here, I think Shaz is one of the rare exceptions of, even though it's a single game, I would probably play him as a support 2 in combined.
Certainly, rather than pick up Dogman with unsure playtime or something like that, who plays twice, I think that's definitely a good call. Shaz is one of those players. As long as he's not playing 0
Dogman
times,
doesn't play twice. Dogman
he doesn't. Oh well, all right, bad example, but yeah, you get my point. There's plenty of others in there.
Yep. I would play him over a Vancouver Titan player, even though because they had like really poor points. Yeah. Although granted, I don't know. Vancouver Titans is still a question mark. I think you're going to get 200 points out of Shaz.
Yeah.
He only scored 150 in one game.
Shazbot. Don't doubt the Shaz. Sure. This match too, I think, has a lot of map 5 potential with how strong Paris looked running goats. Yes. So I think that he's going to be a really solid play here. Probably give you a good performance. Next team on our list is their opponent, the Paris Eternal. The goats gods, apparently. I don't know. They took down the defending champion London Spitfire, and now we're trying to figure out what the heck to do with this team that maybe we didn't have a ton of faith in a week ago. At least I didn't, anyways. I had just about none. Hip was probably the surprise player of the weekend for me in week 1. He was a very, very stable flex support player. Didn't statistically have the strongest point total. They did only play once, but a $1.25 is nothing to sneeze at here. So he's a very, very startable asset for me in a best game format, especially when I think we might go to 5. Otherwise, honestly, this team didn't statistically stack up. We talked about different scenarios. They had a fairly convincing win, so that could have contributed to part of the disappointing stats. But as far as everybody else that played really here, Soon, Nico, Finzi, Cruz, Ben Best, all of them, I don't want it yet. I think they should be owned if they're in decent categories here. And I think Cruz is kind of one of those fragging Lucios that might have a decent chance. But Ben Best kind of got beaten up a little bit, I thought, in their matchup. Like, despite the win, he didn't really impress me very much. So this is a team that I think might be peaking early, and part of you is going to want to ride that wave. But other than Hip right now, I think just give him this week to show you a little bit more, and then we can kind of make another decision here. A team that wins isn't necessarily your best fantasy asset, because look how good Houston was for everybody in week 1. All their players popped off in fantasy. Didn't mean anything, as far as the win category goes, or the win column goes.
Chengdu also.
Right. Yeah. So winning doesn't always mean fantasy success, and we're going to have to keep an eye on Paris. Maybe they're a team that just spreads everything out, like has no true carry. I really don't know. Very, very small sample size on them. So despite ZP and Sideshow putting them number 1 overall, from a fantasy owner perspective, what is the Uber phrase? Calm your farm. You gotta relax a little bit and just let these guys play it out a little bit. Own them, stash them, put them on your bench, but don't be in a hurry to rush them out there right now. Could not be the biggest point performance. We got one more to go here, Asmith. Who's the last team on the list?
San Francisco Shock. They're playing Vancouver, and I would be very hesitant. You don't know who's going to be starting support, flex support. You don't know if Sleepy is going to the bench, and if Violet is back. I mean, I know he is back, but I don't know if he's actually going to start. You don't know what's going to happen there. They're playing one game. Why take a flyer on it? I think it's a little too risky, even though Sleepy did a phenomenal job. I think it's a little too risky to start those options. Choi Ho Bin's getting split time. Their DPS are splitting time. Almost all of their players are splitting time. So I think it's a hard no.
I think the one thing to note about a player like Sleepy, where you're not sure if he's either going to not play or play less have a bad score, or he popped off this week. So if you have a good, consistent team, find another option for Sleepy, because you don't want to throw that potential 0 in your boat.
Yeah.
If you have a bad team like me, play as someone like Sleepy, where like if he gets a 0, I was going to lose anyway, but if he pops off, maybe I have a chance.
I mean, he's only playing one game, so that's
right. It's less of a thing this week, but just as a general thing, that's like,
Sure.
if you have a bad team overall, like sometimes you got to take these gambles. Sometimes you got to shoot for the moon and try to get these guys that pop off, because you're not going to win without them.
Yeah.
It's true.
I think Choi Hyo-bin startable, even with the one game. In the best game format, he was 121 points. That's pretty solid. Moth was pretty good. I'm waiting there, though. I'm not wholly sold on him. I'm also playing Architect and Sinatra. I'm not afraid of San Francisco in a one-week game. If it's the best game format, I think they're a team that can compete with anybody.
That's fair.
No matter how good the format is. Vancouver can be world beaters, and San Francisco is going to at least be able to hang with them. Map 5 potential here, I can definitely see that as well. I'd rather take a little bit of a risk, and I'm looking for opportunities or reasons to bench Choi Hyo-bin, since he's not playing 100% of the map time, but he way outperformed Nevix to me, and it is a matter of time before that is 100% his job. Asmith's not wrong to want to wait for it, but I'm looking at numbers that tell me he's startable right now, and there's upside of getting more playtime, not less, I think, as we go on. But that wraps up the Who Do I Start This Week section. We've still got a good amount to go here. I've also been just completely slacking on the sleepers, even though I yelled at you guys to do it and then just ignored it. But, Asmith, why don't you talk to us about the 2 suspended players left to navigate here while I try to find a support player.
Okay, the biggest one there is Neko. Neko, the main support, the flex support for Toronto Defiant. That's why Aid is looking the way he is, and then you have Ripa, best support in the league apparently. No, Shaz's backup, so I mean that doesn't really affect anything there. Sleepers.
Yeah, sleepers. Let's start with supports. I won with Sleepy last week. It was pretty easy to see that coming, so I just kind of stole that one, to be perfectly honest with you. But I'm going to go a little risky here, and I'm going to say that oink, oink, here comes the boink. I'm going to go ahead and start boink this week again. Listen, the guy, if you remember from before Overwatch League was even a thing and Lucio was actually a hero, this guy was doing stuff. Him and Bigus were doing things on Lucio nobody else was doing. He picked up on that a little bit. Maybe the gap's closed a little bit since Overwatch League's taken off, but I just think he's got a lot of really good potential. I think in a best game format, especially here, I think there's a good chance Houston's very competitive against Hangzhou, whether it's 5 maps or not. I don't think we're looking at a stomp here. I think a lot of people are going to discount that as maybe a one-week anomaly. I don't think it was. There was too many main supports that did well. They may trade back and forth with each other a little bit, but I'm looking at a player with matchups I think he can be competitive in, and I don't think the team's just going to be like mechanically shut down in either of them. They'll probably lose handily to New York, but at least make it a little interesting at times. So yeah, I'm willing to go with boink. Asmith, who do you got here?
Look, I've got Kaio. We hyped him up. I hyped him up a lot to be picked up here. He is a flex support, but he was very bottom tier, and I personally like their matchup against Florida, and I think Seoul is a possibility they pops off, and he was the best scorer on that Chengdu team. I think he's gonna end up scoring you a pretty decent penny there, especially on. I think best game he's going to actually do decently well. Blevins?
Yeah, my support here, I'm going with IDK.
Just couldn't decide, huh?
I have no idea. I'm going to keep making that joke the entirety of his career.
You should.
But yeah, Hangzhou Spark, they've got 2 winnable games, again, if not just like game 5 potential twice. And IDK put up a pretty good performance, and I'm in on the hype train for the shock. Or sorry, God, I'm gonna do that at least 30 times this show. The Spark, I'm in on that hype. I think they're a potential like top 8 if not top 5 team, and he's an integral part of it.
Who did you like,
There you
the Hangzhou Spark or the Guangzhou Charge? Which one was it? Or no, I tried to flip it and couldn't. Damn it! All right, moving on. Let's talk about some sleepers of the week.
The Hong Spark Shock.
The
There you go.
Hong Spark Shock. That is Team
Nailed it.
21. We just leaked it right here live. You guys caught it. Sorry, Nate. We weren't going to tell anybody, but we had to. All right, moving on. We've got some tank sleepers to talk about this week. Asmith was a big winner with the Rhea bombs in week 1. Who do you got for us in week 2?
Look, week 2, I like Yakpung, the Toronto Defiant bomber here. I think he's going to drop some big bombs and not zeros. When I say big bombs, I think he's going to do pretty well, and Toronto looks to be competitive in their matches here. So with possibilities of Game 5 combined format, he's going to tear it up. He's probably going to be top 5 tank. I'm picking it.
Yakpung. That's bold. I'm going to go with a similar bold pick. I think playtime just really helps boon this player quite a bit. A team that showed some upward momentum we maybe weren't seeing. So I don't think this guy's necessarily been drafted like crazy. I think RCK is going to be available for some of you guys. They've got what I think is a very, very winnable matchup against the Guangzhou Charge without knowing much about them. And then I might be predicting Philly to beat Dallas here, but bad Philly is a thing. Apparently good Dallas is a thing, maybe. I don't know. But that tells me, hey, I'm giving you guys credit, and you're still mad at me. Shoot.
I'm not. I said, hey.
Oh, okay. I thought it was like, hey, come on now. I was like, shoot, man, I'm trying.
Like, hey.
I'm trying. All my Dallas positivity is going to be begrudging. It's my duty as an Outlaws fan to give you guys a little slack even when it's going well. But I don't know. Just RCK, he's got that playtime locked and loaded, and he feels kind of safe. Still not a big believer in him, but I did forget to pick my sleepers at all and had to pick one pretty last second. So give me playtime.
Or give you peace.
Here's the thing, DeathBlow.
Mm-hmm.
You did better than Asmith, because Asmith not only didn't pick a top 5 tank, he didn't even pick the best tank on the Toronto Defiant. Give me Envy here. Yakpung looked fine last week 1, played like he was scared. Again, I talked on the main show, on the flagship show, about how if you can go back and look at that tape and be like, hey, maybe you should use your Earth Shatter once every 13 minutes. But man, Envy just more consistent, just better, man.
To be fair, I thought Yakpung was the off tank, just off of half thought. But
okay.
Well, that was my fault. I was like, oh yeah, Envy's
either way, normally we don't let people pick, top 4 performers at their position, but since Blevins
top
is
4
in best,
we're doing combined, aren't we? These are based on
what we're looking at. No one told me, but he's
what? Well, I'm so confused.
We've got to come up with rules.
5, 6,
we'll talk
7,
about it.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
As far
16.
as best goes, he was number 4. So I think that's mildly weak, but I'll give it to you anyways because there's a lot of questions about
number
that team.
20 in
sure, on a 1 week sample size when he's played 50% of the games as everybody else.
Sorry,
that makes him like what, number 10 overall average, something like that. I don't know, math.
Sorry, bro. I'll take my W and be happy with it.
What a cheater! All right, that's okay. You won't be here next week to claim your top spot in the sleepers.
Got him.
Let's go to the DPS sleepers of the week. That means A. Smith leads us off because he had the dude himself, DeFran, last week. Who do you got this week, bud?
Look, I went big on DeFran last week, and I'm going big on another guy. I'm going big on Happy. Look, a lot of people are discounting the Guangzhou Charge. I think they started to pick it up, and I think Happy has the pure mechanical skill to do well. He did halfway decent. I expect him to do a little more than halfway decent. Look, they play Dallas and Vancouver. Dallas... I love Dallas, and I think Dallas is going to win, but I still think that has a chance to go to 5, and that possibility alone gives you the opportunity. And Vancouver looks super strong, but I think Happy can pop off, and he has the opportunity to boom.
Well, if Blevins can cheat, so can I. Give me Ivy from the Toronto Defiant. I think he's going to be a solid performer. Listen, That's
Yeah,
more
he's number 6.
That's more of a sleeper than Envy was, let me tell you.
Sure.
But I'll even change it. I'll go Stellar to balance it out a little bit, because I will be here next week to claim my number 1 spot.
Am I not going to be here next week?
I don't know, Blevins, you tell us. It seems to be 50-50 with you, brother.
I thought you knew something I didn't know.
How would we know? No, but in all seriousness, Blevins has talked about it. I've talked about it on 2 shows now running. The Toronto Defiant. There's something here. Also, I really like this team. I want them to succeed. So if I'm taking a chance, digging a little deeper for a sleeper pick, I'm gonna go with a guy on a team I'm already rooting for. So give me Stellar. Blevins, who do you got? Which NYXL player you got for us this time? Because we know you're going to pick one of them.
Well, hold on. Now that you opened up Ivy, I'm
going to go with Nene?
I'm going with Shirtboy.
I almost went with Dante since the rules changed, but that didn't work either. So.
I adjusted my sights to not be cheating and pick someone outside of the top 15 here. I'm going to go with Libero. Again, I wanted to wait a week and see. Granted, I wasn't here last week, but I wanted to see who is NYXL actually going to play in their which DPS player is actually going to play. Nene seems to be the top player here, not available as a sleeper. Libero is the next best option when it comes to DPS. I'm not expecting to see Pine. I'm not expecting to see Flower. I'm not expecting to see SBB this stage unless something changes drastically, or if NYXL decide to innovate. I don't know if either of those things are going to be good for the team. But until then, give me Libero. I think regardless of the meta, you're going to be seeing him. And if you have the chance to pick him up, definitely pick him up. Easy long-term investment.
All right, well, we're cutting some mailbag questions because we're almost to an hour and a half here, but we're going to get a few of them in, guys. This is where you submit us questions by Discord or by Twitter. We answer them live on the show. I'm going to start with this first one because I just love this dude's name so much. Beardy McBeardface wants to know.
There you go.
For unlimited drafts, what is the correct selection criteria? Should I be choosing the best players playing 2 games that week, regardless of their matchup, say NYXL versus Florida, or is it better to choose players that are more evenly balanced? So this is, do I want people in stomps or do I want people in contested matchups? It's a really interesting question. I think DPS are safer than other positions if their playtime is guaranteed in those stomp matchups, in my head at least, and I think I've seen it bear out, but I don't have full access to all last year's stats and numbers to check it out. I think they were even performing pretty well in those stomps. Their characters deal more damage, right? So the guys don't need to be alive against them longer to kind of get their damage in. The ceiling is still lower across the board if it's a stomp, so I think you really want to try to target those close matchups. Anytime you get a game that goes to 5, even if the maps are lopsided, you're probably going to come out ahead on things. That said, I don't know if you guys noticed, but week 1 was nuts. And if you're going to sit here and try to predict every single map 5 that happens, you're going to be wrong way more often than you're right. So for unlimited drafts, since they're huge player pools, you do need to be risky. But I just want to make sure we're talking about, hunt those 5-round matchups fine in unlimited, but in standard leagues, often as not, you want the safety of the really good player in the kind of softball matchup. Your upside's a little lower with it, but again, safety is really important. Safety first, then teamwork. Asmith, give us the next question here, bud.
Look, the next question was very similar by Lady Emma Sky. I know realistically we can't guess the final score with 100% certainty, but would it not always be best to gamble and okay?
I kind of answered the other half of that question in Beardy.
That's kind of why I put it there.
Yeah.
It would be to gamble or play whatever, if they go to 5 maps. So with that, I would lean more towards the 5 maps as opposed to the stomps, and I would do that opposed to DeathBlow. I would do it on every format because the longer you're alive, the more team fights, the more damage you can do.
He's riskier. That's why I won in week 1. Blevins, give us the next question.
I'm gonna jump over here because I haven't looked at the stats specifically to prove it. But
sure.
We've got Tempo Jamma asks, Izayaki had the second highest best score, best format score. That sounds like a weird kid say. He had the second highest bestest score ever. Okay, Izayaki had the second highest best score format. Agilities had the 6th highest, second among DPS. Space was the top scoring tank. How sustainable is their, by there he means LA Valiant's production?
What do you think?
Yeah.
Man, I think, okay, so LA Valiant has traditionally always been like the bottom of the top tier. We talked about this on the flagship show, like, of teams. They've never really been below the middle, the median. They've never really been like a super bad team in Overwatch League. They've never really been the top team in Overwatch League either. So I think it is definitely telling to see, hey, you've got a number 2, a number 6, and a top scoring tank on a team that is arguably like a upper mid level team, maybe like mid, like a little bit higher than that. So yeah, I mean, I think the Valiant has they've gone through changes in their roster. They've gone through shifts, players shifting around. They've gone through this, that, and the other thing. I mean, I think it's a good it's definitely a good watermark to see these players having top scoring performances this early. In terms of sustainability, I think they're one of the teams that I would be most willing to put chips in terms of consistency. So I'd say good in terms of how sustainable is their production. I'd say pretty sustainable.
I definitely agree there. This isn't. I think they're going to drop down a little bit, right? Like they went to map 5 against Hangzhou. As far as I remember, all the maps were very competitive. I think that really boosts their stats up. So, are we looking at Izayaki and thinking he's a support 1? Yes, I am. Am I looking at Agilities thinking he's a DPS 1? Borderline. I think he's kind of on that cusp of 1 to 2. I think you're going to get performances like this throughout the season. I don't think they're going to go away. Their play time feels safe. All that stuff is working to their benefit, but they're all going to drop down a little bit because they're not all going to be in map 5s all the time. Same with Houston. Those guys are going to be really good. Is Dante going to be the number 1 overall scorer every single week? No. Or number 1 overall DPS scorer every week? No, he's not. But they're going to remain up there, right? He's probably going to be a DPS 1, that sort of thing. But Izayaki probably not the second best player in fantasy Overwatch. Agility's probably not the 6th best, that sort of thing. But pretty high up there, so it'll be fairly sustainable. Hey, Smith, we got one more question.
Look, Thornrain asks, is it wise to stay away from main tanks in Unlimited and just stick to the Diva? Possibly. I mean, if you look here, he's talking about just in Unlimited. Just Unlimited is possible, but hey, a main tank was the 7th highest main tank score. So Roar was up there, and then you had others in the top 10. 11, 12, Fate, Axiom. He played off tank, and Sato, Muma. I think they're all up there, but most likely your highest tank score per week is probably going to be an off tank. I will say that, but it's so hard to judge which one it's going to be that if you're going Unlimited, I mean, it's intelligent, I think, because based off this, it's the top 5, top 6 were all off tank. So after week 1, I'll say yes. But if you're talking about non-unlimited league, if you're talking about any league, no. I think main tank are very viable.
If you're talking about
going to be tank 1s,
if you're talking about Cool Matt outscoring every possible main tank option and missed maps, like map 1 of every single one of those series, so he still got 4, I guess, but he did that without the boost of that 5th map. I think that's telling to me. Matt's not even your stat hog kind of a diva player. He's a defensive peel for people kind of a guy. He was still able to put up those numbers. Envy with the missing flex support on that team was still there. So there's times it would, there'll be main tanks that outscore the off tank that you choose. But in Unlimited, I don't want safety. I want to hit the top guys. So I want to pick the off tanks I think are going to do it and put my chips in on them. So I'm probably staying away from main supports and Unlimited myself, or main tanks and Unlimited myself.
Agreed.
All right, gentlemen. Well, that's going to wrap up the show here. Unfortunately, we don't have a Remember the Bellman, so we're going to play the song just to make Bellman sad when he listens to the episode. And then, unfortunately, Bellman, I don't think I've ever done this to you.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
You got shame, Bell. That had to happen. All right, but that's going to wrap up this episode, guys. I hope you had a blast in week 1 like we did. I hope you guys are ready for week 2. Don't forget, never too late to start drafting a team for this season. I plan on trying to maybe run one tomorrow. I'm not exactly sure. I might wait another week, but it's kind of lame to wait 2 weeks, I guess. I don't know. I just want to play Apex Legends. Get off my back. But yeah, anyways, any parting words here? Anything, last bits of advice you guys want to yell out before we get going?
Yes, pick up Neko if you can. If he's on the waiver wire, pick him up this week because he's going to be a hot commodity once people realize that he's playing next week. If you have an open spot, if you have a goose egg on your roster, if you have even a questionable spot, pick up Neko because he's going to be a support 1 easy if he hasn't already been picked up.
All right, guys, you can find us on Twitter to submit your questions at HNP_FOWLplay. I am at HNP DeathBlow. Blevins, what's your Twitter tag again?
At _Blevins.
Asmith?
At Asmith_OW.
We literally cannot get enough fantasy questions, guys. Tweet at us whoever you want. We'll answer them as best we can or send them directly to the show. You can join our Discord, discord.me/High Noon Podcast. There is a fantasy mailbag section. If you get them in early in the week on Sunday and Monday, we'll get them in on the show. Otherwise, after that, we'll just answer your questions on the fly as they come up in the text chat there, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. For A. Smith, for the Blevins, I am DeathBlow. Have a great week.
See you.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world.